Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Kant's philosophy. This is new again for fourth year syllabus. There are 5 chapters for fourth year syllabus from this Kant's philosophy. In second year, third year, we have learned the Kant's philosophy. Many aspects of him we have learned. Kant's philosophy, the chapter number 17, which we are going to start, relates with the practical part of the organon. First 70 aphorism, 1 to 70, they are included over there up to the chapter number 16. And from this chapter onwards, he starts explaining about the practical part of the organ. Out of those aphorisms, right from 71 to 291, 71 to 145 deals with the semi-practical aspect of the organ. Means it deals with first the disease classification. It deals with case taking, practical case taking. It deals with drug proving, and all those aspects are semi-practical, and then actually ideally practical part of the organon starts. In those 5 chapters, which we're going to learn from this Kant's philosophy, right from chapter number 17 to 22, we're going to learn disease classification in detail, and out of which maximum has been covered by J.T. Kent on 3 chronic miasms: the sora, the psychosis, and the syphilis. We'll start with the chapter number 17, the science and the art. There is always one question is asked in the exam: explain in detail the scientific aspect of homeopathy along with the art. Or sometimes it has been asked that homeopathy is not only the science but also an art. This chapter gives certain ideas about that answer. So for those students who are there in final year, must go through this chapter. So chapter number 17, lecture number 17, the science and the art. It relates with aphorism number 71. Up to this time, we have been studying principles that relate to the knowledge of homeopathy. At this point, Hahnemann arrives at 3 important conclusions as to what we have been studying in the application to the practice. And there are 3 steps to be surveyed. So what he is saying, before that, up to the aphorism number 70, we have learned the theoretical aspect of homeopathy. The laws, the doctrines, how those laws are derived. So you have learned about the primary action of the medicine, the secondary action of the medicine. You have learned about the nature's law of cure. You have learned about the physician's mission. You have learned about the ideal cure. Then you have learned about the qualities of homeopathic physician. So all those are aspects of the theoretical aspects of the homeopathy. Now, right from this aphorism, he puts 3 questions in front of you. So, which are those 3 questions which are written over there in the aphorism number 71? Those he highlights over here. First is, by what means is the physician to arrive at the necessary information relative to a disease in order to be able to undertake a cure? Of course, that relates to the disease in general and the patient in particular. So, first question which Hahnemann asks is, what are the things with which you will arrive to understand the patient? So first you must know what is disease in general and what is disease in particular. Disease in general means a diagnostic point of view, what disease it is, and from particular means how that disease is expressing individually in a characteristic way so that you can reach to the remedy. So first part is related to the disease in general and patient in particular. In going over the third paragraph, we gathered together the means of studying an epidemic and in each man in particular. We shall now proceed to study the disease in general and the patient in particular from now on to the end of this course. All the rest of the study is of such a character. There are a great many questions that arise in this problem that must be studied in detail. The study of the nature of acute miasms and study of nature of chronic miasms. The study of such changes as shown there are two distinct classes of sickness. Each one is to be studied in its most general way and each person as in a particular way. So he starts over there that in this part, that is aphorism number right from the 71, 72 to the aphorism number around 80, 105, 104, you're going to learn about this part about the patient. What are the diseases with which patient is suffering from and how that disease is particularly expressing in that individual through a case taking. So we're going to learn disease classification. At the same time, you're going to learn the mode of case taking in acute diseases as well as chronic diseases. These are the things which you're going to learn in this first part of the practical part of the organ. Then the second, how is he to discover the morbific powers of the medicines? Means how the person will, how the homeopathic physician will know the characteristics of each and every remedy. That is what is called as drug proving. That is to say, of the instruments destined to cure natural disease. This constitutes a study of materia medica and knowledge of how it is built, which is by provings, by recording facts. So aphorism number 105 to 145 deals with drug proving. There are different methods of understanding exactly the medicine. Hahnemann have mentioned all those details, the laws related with the provings, how proving should be done, how the prover should be, what are the qualities of a prover, what he should do and what he should not do. All the things which he has mentioned over there, at the same time, the doses in order to give, to prove the remedy. So, you're going to learn in that second part the drug proving. And last, most practical part of the organon starts right from aphorism number 146 onwards. And that's the third part, which Hahnemann have explained in 71 aphorism. Third is that what is the best mode of applying these morbific powers, medicines in the cure of diseases. This involves the study of all methods and settling upon that which is the best. So this is the most practical part of the organic medicine. That is application of knowledge of diseases, application of knowledge of medicines to the knowledge of diseases. And this part is absolutely a practical, where all pros and cons are explained by Hahnemann so that there will be no problem in treating any variety of case. So this part is very important and that we have learned in earlier year, third year. Now he starts to proceed in the study of these in rational, scientific and careful manner is the object of future study of this book. It leads from now on from the science of homeopathy to the art of healing. We see that we have now gone over the principal part of that, which is merely science, the science of homeopathy. We have none of enormous classifications in the study of homeopathy that are resorted to the traditional medicine. They should not appear in the study of applied homeopathy. The study of classification of diseases as is done in traditional medicine is useful because we come in contact with the world. So what he is explaining? He is explaining over there the concepts how we have to study the homeopathy. We have to start with the classification of disease first, and that is called as Hahnemannian classification of diseases. In fact, Hahnemann was the first one who thought in that direction that it is necessary to classify the diseases. During his time, during his era, there was a classification done by Carl Linnaeus regarding the plants, and Jovier, who has done the classification of animal kingdom. Hahnemann was contemporary of that time. He understood that it is also needed when we have to study and understand the diseases. So he started classifying diseases in his own way. And Hahnemannian classification is the first important classification of diseases where we can easily reach to the certain aspects. Thereafter, the modern science or old school also started classifying their diseases. But the classification which they have made is rather difficult. They have named it with many aspects. But what Kent is saying, you must know both classifications, the old school classification as well as our homeopathic classification. Old school classification is necessary to understand because when we have to talk with other peoples from the other pathies, the classification which everyone follows, that everyone must know. And that's why in order to get properly communicated, this type of classification is necessary. The study of classification of disease as is done in traditional medicine is useful because we come in contact with the world. As the boards of health require us to state what particular disease, according to the classification, a patient died from, classified in accordance with old school nosology, we have, therefore, to go into the study of diagnosis. So, old school practitioner classified diseases on the basis of diagnosis, or which is called a nosological diagnosis. And this concept of naming the diseases as is previous one. It becomes rather simple to understand what disease patient is suffering from. But same is not useful in homeopathy for prescribing point of view. In homeopathy, we have to understand the patient. It is not the diagnosis which will going to help for the prescription. We want the use of adjectives. Homeopathy diagnosis cuts very little figure in the treatment. But all the ultimates in the case must be brought forward and described by name. We want the use of adjectives. We want the use of large language. We want the descriptive power. In order that nature of sickness, which is all that man can know about diseases, may be brought out on a paper and thereby caused to appear at any time thereafter to the mind of the physician. If the physicians were simply to make a study of disease and after studying it were to give it a name and let that name constitute the record, no future prescription could be made. So what he is saying over there, the allopathic method or the old school method of classifying the diseases is the method with which you know the name of the disease, with which you know the end product, that is pathology of the disease. Yes, it's good to know the disease because of which we know the pathogenesis of the disease. At the same time, on the basis of that, we can find it out the prognosis of the disease. But we should not depend upon that diagnosis for the purpose of prescription. And the physician thereafter, in referring to this record, would know nothing about its nature. The name conveys no idea of the nature of sickness, only its place in general classification. A knowledge of nature of individual sickness is necessary for the prescription, and this depends upon the ascertainments of the details. So what he is explaining over there, in order to prescribe a remedy, we must know all the attributes of the patient. We must know each and everything about the patient. We must know each and everything about the symptoms of the patient, the manifestations of the disease of the patient, so that we can arrive at the proper prescription. It's not possible on the name of the disease. So if the patient comes towards you with a diagnosis that he is having SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, are you able to give any remedy to the patient? You cannot. Because in homeopathy, it is not possible to reach to the remedy on the basis of this diagnosis. But we have to deal with that patient. We have to understand that patient. We have to understand the psychopathogenesis of that. We have to understand how the patient is presenting the symptoms, the miasm behind the disorder, the constitution of the patient. And when you get all those things in together, then it is possible to arrive at the remedy. So, the whole story depends upon manifestations, that is totality, constitution, and miasmatic background, and not on the diagnosis. The very first of this study is to prove and realize that there are two classes of diseases, acute and chronic. Now he starts going towards the classification. Classification, Hahnemann have done very nicely. He has classified first it into two types of diseases. First variety was called to be adynamic diseases, and second variety is called as dynamic diseases. So, adynamic, where the cause is external. Cause is external to the body. In dynamics, the cause is internal. So the things which happens outside, because of which enters inside the human being, and because of which certain disorders develops, or if it is traumatic, all those comes under the name of a dynamic diseases. But dynamic diseases are the diseases where cause is internal derangement of the vital force, where cause is invisible, it is hidden, it is not possible to reach to that cause. Only thing we can understand that on the basis of symptomatic manifestations. So we have first classification is adynamic and dynamic. Then dynamic are further divided is into acute and chronic diseases. So first important variety of dynamic diseases is acute and chronic. The general classification of all diseases is made in this way. The acutes are thrown into one group and studied as acute diseases, and so with the chronic. So basic classification always remains to be acute and chronic. What acute presents? What are different types of acutes? And how those develops? That we're going to study in next lecture. It's better to stop over here on this note, and tomorrow we're going to learn the classification, and after classification his aspects about the science and art. So thank you being there. We'll meet tomorrow again with the next part of this chapter. And Kant's philosophy is rather easy. Language is quite easy than the close philosophy and Robert's philosophy. So we're going to finish these 5 chapters very early. Already we have learned a miasm in details from Roberts also. So many aspects of it are many aspects of them are present over there. So will it will be rather a fast revision of all those things while learning the Kant's philosophy. So thank you being there and good evening.
Sir,
Thank you very much, sir.
sir, your lecture was very nice on Sunday. Very, very informative.
Thank you. Who is there?
Sir, Meenakshi Ratanpal.
Yeah, your name is not there. It is iPhone written, so I could not
Okay,
understand.
okay, okay, okay.
Thank you. Thanks a
Very
lot.
nice lecture, sir. Huh.
Okay. Thank you.